Near the surface of Issom-Har, the residential district of the ancient ruined city of Gelmora, which once flourished beneath the Twelveswood, a curious portal has appeared leading to a dark labyrinth haunted by an apparition of at least one old friend. The locals of Quarrymill have taken to calling this place the Palace of the Dead, and they are disturbingly close to the mark, but this enigmatic and ever-changing maze is still far more than it seems. Gelmora has already hosted horrors related to Edda twice. The Tamtar at Deepcroft was where she first lost her Avir and stepped on the path to madness, and it was there that she returned when she hoped to lure the Warrior of Light to provide Avir's warped soul with a new host. As a city that grew from the deep dark, only as a last resort for the Elzen of the Twelveswood that had been banished from the surface by the elementals following the War of the Magi, it is a fitting stage for this tale of loss, despair, and madness. But we know from the first that the Palace of the Dead is somehow distinct from other Gelmoran ruins so far uncovered. The local wood whalers tell us that not only is the threshold of this place a magical portal that has appeared in Issom-Har, rather than a physical and tangible passageway, but once they enter they fall under what seems to be a kind of curse, which saps away their ether and leaves them with an inexplicable sense of dread. Furthermore, they have found the layout of the labyrinth to be constantly changing. The expeditions attending Pajali I Una Kotor suspects these to be enchantments weaved by a singularly powerful mage, and it is only by his discovery of an effective mitigation that we are able to enter at all. With special incantations placed upon them by I Una Kotor, the arms and armor of every expeditionary will feed on the ether of the wielder, before it can be entirely drained by the enchantments of the dungeon itself. To put it simply, our weapon sucks up our ether before the dungeon can. So although we enter enfeebled, we do so with the means of all the same defending ourselves. It seems that our progression in strength through the dungeon can be attributed primarily to two mechanisms. Firstly, that we discover artifacts and reap souls within that lend further energy to our ether pool arms and armor, and secondly, that we gradually adapt to the oppressive atmosphere and are able to gradually return ether to our own body at levels that we can prevent from being drained away from us. I'm sure that the Echo plays no small role in our ability to slowly steel our soul against these magics that would otherwise tear it asunder. But this process of losing and regaining ourselves isn't just the core to the mechanical progression of the Palace of the Dead. I believe it is also essential to understanding the nature of the dungeon and of our experiences within. We begin and end in environments that are clearly Gelmoran, but everything that happens between these 2 points is passing strange. If we treat each of these floors as distinct physical spaces and stack them on top of one another as their order implies, we end up with something that looks like this. But it seems unlikely, to say the least, that we would have one Gelmora built 120 yalms beneath another Gelmora, with nothing in between but empty caves full of crystals. But maybe they had to dig deeper to avoid all the monsters. Well, there are even more deadly monsters further down. But maybe these middle layers were Gelmoran mines. Well, it would make sense to have mines running beneath the city, but not so much to have yet another city identical to the first in every way but for the mood lighting, still further beneath the mines. So I would like to theorize that the layout of the Palace of the Dead is far less literal than it appears. The wood whalers imply that the inconsistency of each floor's layout is due to the effects of the enchantments. They say that it causes them to be filled with dread and scarcely able to put one foot in front of the other. It seems clear that it also muddles their sense of direction and spatial reasoning, and this is an effect to which we are not immune. It is a common film trope in horror and thrillers for a character to apparently descend through labyrinthian and increasingly dangerous and disturbing spaces, only for the viewer to realize that they never actually left the physical space they began in, and that the experience is attributable to some kind of madness, curse, nightmare, or even the experience of dying. I believe that our progression through the Palace of the Dead is something like this. As we wander disoriented around these Gelmoran ruins, the enchantments warp our senses and we find ourselves stumbling through a twilight zone formed by the participation of our mind with Ethys. As our ether pool weapon and our own spirit strengthens and adapts to the environment, our senses begin to clear and we appear to re-enter a deeper Gelmora, where in fact we have never left. In doing so, we push closer to where Edda physically is, and so she redoubles her efforts. She, or more likely her Ascian puppeteer, casting us into gloom and throwing nightmare apparitions in our path. But they are, at this point, through the final 10 floors, unable to once again entirely immerse us in an illusionary environment as they did in at least floors 11 through 30. This theory regarding the actual nature of the dungeon also explains why the only apparently living spoken peoples down there are in fact deceased characters from our own past. You may have come across some of these by now, and a few of them are easy enough to identify, particularly the Duskwhite Lancer as Folkes from the Lancer class questline, and the adventuring party of Dolores Bear that competed with that of Edda and Avir and also ourselves to the first few dungeons before they died in Copperbell Mines. The others have been since identified by my fellow loremonger Anwil Anonymous over at Gamerscape, and I'm satisfied that he is absolutely correct. Ishgardian Pikeman is in fact John Remy Blackheart, whom stole the Chocobo egg during the Gridanian introduction. The frenzied freebooter is Serpent Reaver Bainrus, whom abducts Lamentin citizens for Leviathan in the Limsa introduction, and the rough-spun ruffian is the man who machinates the theft of the Sultana's crown and subsequently the traitor's spurn from Uldar, Garibald the Fargorn. The remaining immortal flame is most likely Commander Ryder, codenamed Mad Snake, officer to Clovissois and Dava stationed in Mordona during 1.0, the two names which he calls as he falls in the palace, and he died at Cartano, although this identification is still little contentious given that their appearances are not identical, although it is not actually possible to recreate Ryder's appearance perfectly with the assets of Final Fantasy XIV since the 2.0 relaunch. It is uncertain whether the encounters with these souls are caused by our own sad and guilty memories, by the dungeon's enchantments drawing the spirits of the restless dead to it, by Edda casting torturous illusions in our path, or perhaps by some combination, but I would be satisfied with any one of these answers. I am also satisfied that despite Edda's defeat and sad catharsis, she hints at a mastermind that will most likely prove to be Ascian, and will give us plenty of scope to further continue into this Palace of the Dead without contradicting anything we've discussed in this video. What we should not be yet satisfied with, however, is the appearance throughout the Palace of the Dead of a motif that we also find in the Tamtara Deepcroft, a motif practically indiscernible from the emblem of the Order of the Twin Adder, the Grand Company of modern Gridania. And so it is this mystery that we're going to try to unravel in the next part, along with the identity of some of the other unique mobs and bosses we encounter along the hazardous path through the Palace of the Dead, so be sure that you don't miss it. In the meantime, if you would like to learn more about Gelmora, I have a rather old and slightly outdated video on the topic, as well as one about Edda, with some superseded speculation, but also a little about the possible real-world inspirations for her character and her journey, so feel free to check them out. But until the next part, I'm Ethys, like and subscribe for more, and thanks for watching.